Welcome. Today we're cracking open a really fascinating 19th century text that claims to have pinpointed a monumental date in world history. And the key, get this, wasn't some new discovery. Nope, it was a law that's thousands of years old. Okay, let's dive right in.
So the text we're diving into, it kicks things off with this really bold, really dramatic statement. The time is at hand. It just sets this powerful, almost mysterious tone for everything that's about to come.
And that's the core puzzle we're going to try and solve today. What is the time? And how on earth does this text claim to have calculated it down to the exact month using a law that's basically ancient history? We're going to follow the logic piece by piece and see how it gets there.
Okay, so to even begin to unravel this, we've got to start with the ancient clue that's at the very heart of this whole thing. It's a concept that the source treats as nothing less than a divine blueprint.
And here it is, the Jubilee year. Now, the text we're looking at says this wasn't just some old historical practice. It was what it calls a type, like a small-scale model, a blueprint that was foreshadowing something way, way bigger for all of humanity. And just look at what a Jubilee involved. I mean, think about the sheer scale of this reset. It was like hitting a giant refresh button for the entire nation. Land goes back, debts are wiped clean, and servants are freed. It was this really powerful way to guarantee liberation and make sure no one was trapped in poverty forever.
Okay, so now that we've got the setup, here's where the mystery really kicks in. The source points out a huge problem, a central conflict. This super important law, this divine promise, it looks like it was totally broken.
And here's why. The Jubilee just stopped. When the Israelites were exiled to Babylon, they couldn't observe it. I mean, how could they? They weren't in their land. This isn't just a theory. It's a historical fact. And it creates a huge problem, right? The type, that shadow of a future event, just seemed to vanish.
But then, the source throws this curveball. It points to this verse from the Bible, arguing that not even the tiniest detail of the law could possibly fail. This creates a total paradox, doesn't it? You have a law that supposedly cannot fail, but a practice that very clearly did.
So that's the big question, right? How do you solve that? Well, the answer it comes up with is the key to its entire prophetic timeline. And believe me, it involves some pretty fascinating math.
So how does the text solve this massive puzzle? Well, it lays out not one, but two distinct mathematical proofs that it claims were basically hidden in plain sight in the scriptures all along.
Okay, so proof number one is called the laws method. And the idea is pretty wild. It takes the original Jubilee cycle and just scales it way, way up. It basically asks, if a cycle of 49 years points to a 50th year Jubilee, what would a cycle of Jubilees point to? And the math itself is actually super simple, but the implication? Whoa, it's profound. You take the Jubilee number, 50, and multiply it by itself to get this grand cycle of 2,500 years. This, the text argues, is the antitype, the big, grand reality that the smaller Jubilee was always pointing towards.
And this is how they build the timeline. The author figures out that the very last Jubilee that was actually observed happened 19 years before the Babylonian exile. So they start the 2,500-year clock from right there. And when you follow it all the way through history, boom, it lands on a very specific date, October 1874.
But hey, one proof is never enough, right? So the source builds a parallel case. It argues that this same conclusion is backed up by prophecy, coming at it from a completely different angle to double-check the math. Okay, this table is awesome because it lays it all out so clearly. You've got two different paths that lead to the same place. The prophet's method is based on this idea that 70 Jubilees were ordained in total. They knew 19 had been observed. That means you're left with 51 unobserved cycles. Multiply 51 by 49 years, and you get 2499 years. It's an almost identical time period, pointing to the exact same endpoint.
So here's the bottom line. You have these two really intricate calculations, right? Pulled from different parts of the Bible, and they're both aimed, like arrows, at one single monumental date.
And that date is October 1874. According to this 19th century text, this isn't just some random point on a calendar. No way. It's the grand finale of a 2,500-year prophetic countdown.
So what's supposed to happen on this date? Well, it's not the fire and brimstone end of the world. It's the start of something new. The source calls it the times of restitution, a 1,000-year period of restoration for all of humanity, kicked off, it claims, by the unseen presence of the great restorer.
Okay, but, a date on a calendar is pretty abstract, right?
The author knew they had to connect this calculation to the real world. So, they started looking around for tangible signs, evidence that this great Jubilee had actually begun.
And what they saw was this explosion of social and political movements happening right around that time. You had calls for labor reform, for better government, for food safety, the rise of societies to protect animals and children. All of this was seen as the Jubilee trumpet starting to sound. They were the first messy, disruptive signs that this new era of liberation was kicking into gear.
So from the text's point of view, all this upheaval, the strikes, the protests, the demands for change, this wasn't just random progress. It was a necessary first step in this grand restitution, kind of like a wounding to heal. You have to clean out the old injustices before the real restoration can begin.
And that really leaves us with this final thought. You have this text that meticulously lays out its math, its logic, its evidence, all to build this incredibly precise timeline for the dawn of a new age. It's a fascinating look at how a system of belief can be constructed, and it really makes you think, what does it reveal about us? About our deep-seated desire to find order and meaning in the grand, chaotic sweep of history?